La verdad es que estos últimos años en los que España ha sufrido tanto, me los he pasado pasando de aeropuerto en aeropuerto por Latinoamérica y es muy curioso ver que aunque pues, estamos pasando una situación económica muy difícil, en Latinoamérica la población media, pues la mitad de la población normalmente tiene menos de 26 años, eso los hace nativos digitales. Están teniendo penetración total de las tecnologías de Internet y las telecomunicaciones. Son sitios donde no existen competidores asentados, donde normalmente las tecnologías nuevas tienen una proliferación muchísimo más rápida. Y siempre le digo a la gente española, para todos los que trabajéis en industrias de contenidos digitales, Internet o en nuevas tecnologías, hay un mercado interesantísimo donde tenemos una expansión privilegiada. Así que, no sé, estamos observando con muchísimo interés todo lo que pasa en Latinoamérica y nos encanta que haya los lazos más cercanos entre nuestros eventos aquí y allí. Bueno, quiero dar la bienvenida al siguiente panel, que para mí yo creo que es uno de los que tiene más significado para enlazar las diferentes componentes del ecosistema de innovación. En concreto, las universidades y centros de investigación con las grandes empresas. Ese panel se llama de Laboratorio a Mercado y para hablar en ese panel voy a pedir que me acompañe Leon Sandler, que es el director del Expande Center, que es como el centro más importante de transferencia de tecnología en MIT. Leon, you have the first intervention. I don't know if you want to stand up or do it from your chair.
Let me put this down. Great. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be here in the wonderful city of Valencia and with the great warm weather. And what I'm going to do is I'll spend about 10 minutes talking about what we do at the MIT Expande Center to move technologies from the labs at MIT to the marketplace. So first, let me give you an overall context of our operation. We've been around for about 10 years. And in 10 years, we have worked with about 110 projects from all over MIT. And we've seen 28 spin-out companies that have raised about $400 million in investment capital. Here are the logos of some of those companies. But I want just to tell you a story. I will just pick one of them. And this is Ambry Corporation. So about, let's see, 7, almost 8 years ago, in 2006, one of the professors at MIT, Don Sadoway, came to us with an idea. And he'd been looking at the problem of how do you store energy on the electrical grid. As I was flying into Valencia, I saw a lot of windmills. So problem with windmills and solar, they produce energy, but you can't store it. How would you store large quantities? So Don started off, he looked at an area of his expertise, which is, this is a picture of an aluminum smelter. The British would say an aluminium smelter. If you look at that picture back there, in the distance, you actually can't see the end of this. This goes back as long as about 2 football fields. And it uses a huge amount of electrical energy to create the aluminum. And Don said, I wonder if I could use a process like this to store large quantities of energy using some molten metals, but be able to actually reverse the process, take something like this and really create a large battery out of it. Could he create a battery? So in 2006, he came to us with this idea, and they started work on it. And here is a picture. This is Don and Dave Bradwell, his PhD student, working in the lab on an early prototype. And they continued to work on this for about 5 years. After 5 years, they were at a point where they could spin out a company. It's raised between $15 and $20 million, and they expect to have a product available next year. So you can see this whole process took almost 8 years before the first product. So let me talk a little bit about what is that process. So if we start here, you'll see up there's academic research is what we do at the university, mainly funded by government grants, by corporations. But we want to end up, that's what we want. We want a product. But a product has to be produced by a commercial enterprise. We don't produce products at the university, and that's going to take a lot of money. So to take what we have at the university, to turn it into a product, for every, let's say, dollar or euro we spend at the university, it's going to take 10 to 100 times that to turn that into an actual product that people can buy and use. Somebody is going to have to make that investment. Could be a large company, could be venture capital investors, government money, friends and family, some combination. And there are two key things that they look at before they make that investment to take the university technology out. And those two are, let's see if this clicks. No. Oh, there we go. Technology risk and market risk. So what you want to know, if I'm going to invest all this money in taking something which is early science and turning it into a product, what is the probability that it will succeed? Is the technology risk and is the market risk small enough? So what we do at the Despande Center, we take something and over a period of, it could be 2 years to 5 years, we are trying to reduce the market risk, reduce the technology risk to the point where an intelligent investor will say, I think it's worth making the investment to turn this into a product, because if we put that investment in place, we believe we will get a product, and also there will be a market to buy it. So how do you do that? How do you reduce the technology risk? How do you reduce the market risk? Well, to reduce technology risk, you do a lot of experiments in the lab. So you start out in the lab, and what you have to do is you have to basically, you build prototypes, you gather data, you start to do tests in the lab to really show technical feasibility. Can this technology really accomplish what it is we said it will? Can we get to the specifications we need? If it's a battery, can it have the efficiency? Can it have the energy density? And so throughout this process over a 2-year period, you're continuing to do more and more lab work, which is not that expensive, to gather data and show technical feasibility. But how do you know what direction to take this lab work in, and how do you understand the market risk? The market risk is all about, if I finally build it, will there be customers? And what exactly will those people want? What will the specifications need to be? How will it have to perform? There is only one way to find out about the market, and that is by talking to people. You have to talk to people. So you have a lot of conversations with different people who understand the market, with customers, with users, with suppliers. And what you do is you take that information, you bring it back to the lab, you change your experiments, and you now gather more and more data to finally get to a point where your technology risk and market risk are reduced. Let me give you, in closing, a few examples of some other technologies, other products from that list. So here we have a product, this is available on the market today. It's a dental scanner. So on the right, you'll see looks like a wand, a toothbrush. The dentist moves that around the patient's mouth. It captures a 3-dimensional digital image of the teeth. This is like a computer-aided design file which can be sent off to a machine that can make a cap or a crown for the patient's tooth. Here is another device. You can see a person wearing it on their elbow. This is for someone who has had a stroke and can't really move their arm properly. What the device does is it measures the electrical signal going from the brain to the muscle. You can measure that on the skin. And then there's a motor that can actually move the patient's arm up and down, and the person can now have a better quality of life. And again, this product is available on the market today. Here is a chip which is used in cell phones and also in cell phone base stations to improve the power efficiency of converting electrical energy into radio frequency energy, so you can have use less energy in the base station, have longer life in the cell phone. This is a scanner for scanning the ear canal. If somebody needs a hearing aid put in place today, you would have to put some silicone into the ear to make a mold, which is taken out, scanned, and then a precise hearing aid can be measured. This uses an optical probe, and it optically can measure the precise dimensions of the ear to do this. And finally, let's see, I see a number of you in the audience with glasses. I wear glasses. We're used to when we need a new prescription, we go to the eye doctor. He has us look in the machine. We look at the chart. He adjusts it, and he gives us the prescription. Here is the device. It's a small optic that is put in front of a smartphone. You look at some lines. You adjust the lines with the controls. The lines line up this way. They line up that way. And the smartphone calculates your prescription. And again, very good for low resource setting, developing world. And again, this is a product out of the center. So I think I will stop here, and we'll continue with the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon. Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta que hacer, como vamos a tener algún tiempo para discutir, mi Twitter es Pedro Moneo y lo estaré leyendo para ver si hay algún tema que queramos tratar. Now, Bill, I'm going to welcome you to the stage as well. Vamos a volver a hablar con Bill Mark, que nos va a dar otra perspectiva sobre su experiencia.
Well, I think I have one slide that we can put up. You had a chance to see a lot of slides from me before, so I thought this time I would only show you one slide. This is the set of spin-off ventures that SRI has created. And during my earlier talk, I told you about, at least I mentioned several of them, Siri, Desti, you can see up there. Many of you in the audience have heard of Nuance, which is the biggest speech company in the world. You may have heard of Intuitive Surgical. I hope you never have to use what they build. It's robotic surgery that's more precise than a human surgeon. Those are examples of companies that have gone public. So, as you can see, we have spun off many companies over the years. And I wanted to just briefly discuss two themes that are very important to the way SRI goes about that, and then just give you a couple of examples. So the first theme is repeatability. So we don't want the creation of a spin-off company to be a lucky accident that happens every once in a while. We want it to be a repeatable process, something that we do every year. Now that doesn't mean that every company we launch is going to be a great success, but we want to have a continuous ongoing process. And let me just say a few words about that process. So at SRI is a very project-oriented organization. There's about 2,200 people, and we work on something like 1,000 projects a year. So lots of projects going on, but very few of those are reasonable candidates for a spin-off company. As Leon was saying earlier, when we get to the point of a spin-off company, we're talking about the market. What does the market need? Can we serve the market? So we are constantly looking at all of the projects that we do and constantly talking to people in the marketplace, taking advantage of our location in Silicon Valley, talking to venture capitalists, talking to other people in the ecosystem, and always trying to understand the market needs. When we think that we have an idea that can go to market, that is our venture concept, and we start iterating that internally. Now, the next key step, very important for us, is we will go out and seek an entrepreneur to come in and lead that company. So we have our own Entrepreneur in Residence program. The reason for that is it's very rare for an SRI employee to be the right kind of person to lead a spin-off company. So we always recruit from the outside to bring in that person who's able to lead that company and get it started. Then once we have the entrepreneur, we start developing the value proposition, and we start seeking feedback from what we call friendly venture capitalists. So you can see there's a large list of companies there. Some venture capitalists have invested in several of them and have been successful. So they are our friends, and they're always interested in the next thing coming along. So we talk to them and get their feedback. And then finally, when we're ready, we go out and we talk to other venture capitalists and we get funding. Now, you noticed I've talked about venture capitalists because that brings up the second theme that's very important for us at SRI. We are always starting a company that we think has the possibility to be a billion-dollar company. Now, that does not mean that all of them will become billion-dollar companies. Of course, many of them do not become billion-dollar companies. But we want them to have that potential. And the reason for that is simple economics. When we launch the company, SRI gets a certain share of the equity. Over time, the company almost always will need further investment. So the SRI's share of that company goes down and down as more investment comes in. So unless the company is very high value, at the end of the day, our share will be worth very little. So there's no point in us starting a company unless it at least has the opportunity to become very valuable. And that second theme has an important implication, which means that the funding almost always has to come from venture capitalists, and we like it to be from the very top tier of venture capital because that helps with the chance of success. So repeatable process, high value company. Now, just a couple of examples and then I'll stop. So I have to use Siri as an example because it's so famous around the world. Siri started out based on technology from one of my laboratories. And as I said before, there are many projects. The technology has been built up over years, but it had begun to reach the maturity that we were really seriously talking about market ideas. And then a couple of our researchers decided that they had a particular way to package that technology in a way that was particularly valuable. We funded that internally, and SRI does not have a lot of internal money, so our seed funding is very small. But we funded that, and we made that up to like a proof of concept so that you could see that it would work. Then we hired an entrepreneur, a man named Dag Kitlas, who we had met, and we started working with the team to develop their value proposition, which became how to deliver services over the web. So I'll describe it very briefly. If you remember back, it's almost 10 years ago, say 6 or 7 years ago, if you wanted to do anything on your phone except make a phone call on your mobile phone, okay, it took many clicks. Do you remember that? To download a ringtone or to send an SMS message even was very inconvenient. So the value proposition was you just tell it what you want and it'll do it. Okay, that was the idea behind Siri. And Siri started out, as I said earlier, as an app for the iPhone. It was free. It was a free app. You download it, and Siri made its money from the services that it would connect you with. Okay? This is a very typical SRI startup. The amount of time it took, et cetera, was very typical. Then something extremely unusual happened, and that was the president of the company, Doug Kittless, got a call one day from Steve Jobs. And I can tell you a little story. He picked up the phone, and the person on the other end said, "Hi, this is Steve Jobs." And Doug Kittless said, "Oh, sure," and he hung up. And so actually, Steve Jobs had to call 3 times before he actually made the connection. But that was the beginning. And eventually, as everybody knows, Apple acquired Siri. And that was a wonderful event for the people involved, for SRI, and for the investors, and I think for Apple too. So that was a wonderful success story. One more story, and then I'll stop. So I talked a little bit about the company called Tempo, which is the calendar company. You may remember that from my previous talk. That's still in the middle. It has been launched. You can download the app, at least in the United States. It's still doing a good thing. But they're in the middle of finding more capital to go on to their next round. So the typical story of an SRI spinoff then is a launch with venture capital funding. Some business occurs, the need for more funding always in a spin-off company, and we help them do that. And we hope the Tempo will be a great success as well. There are many other companies that are in the works, but I can't talk to you about those, so I will stop now.
Thank you very much. So we have another 5 minutes before I bring someone else on the stage. I have a few questions that people have been asking over Twitter. I have one personal question before, and it is, when and why do you kill a spin-out, or you kill a project that's being transferred to the market? What are the indicators that make you take that decision?
Are you asking me? Or
I'm asking both of you.
Oh, I'll start. So the first, I went quickly through the SRI process. We have an internal board called the Commercialization Board. I sit on that. And the first job of a group that wants to start a company is to convince us. So most of the ideas never get past the Commercialization Board. So we kill many more ideas than go out. And the primary reason to do that is that they don't have a clear value proposition that they can explain to us and other people. Why is it valuable? Why is whatever you have valuable enough for people to spend money on it? I mean, I don't know about you, but I hate to spend money. And I will only do it if something is very valuable, and they have to explain that.
Leon?
Yes, so I think our process, it's a little different. We will fund very, very risky projects at the front end. So we will give somebody just $50,000 for 1 year of funding, and we'll see what they can do with it. At the end of the year, they have to have hit milestones. If they haven't hit milestones and they come back for more money, then we don't continue funding. So, and we're very tough about that. I have had to tell the head of the chemistry department, sorry, but we're not going to continue to fund your project because you didn't hit the milestones through the year. So that's the process we do. But we'll give them a year to try and get there.
I have another question about technology transfer from universities and especially public research organizations. Usually it's very difficult to realize who was the inventor of the technology or who the technology belongs to. That usually slows down the negotiation to transfer the technology to the market. So I wonder if we could build something like a Creative Commons, like a standard contract or a transparent policy for any IP that comes out of your institutions. I don't know if you have examples, but it seems like having one very simple policy and having it up on the web so that anybody can look at it would be a good way to solve the problem and speeding up the process.
If this are you talking about something which describes how it will be licensed or who owns it?
anything that can help on the process of
Okay.
transferring that technology to the market, all the contracts and the license agreements.
So I would say, and again, we don't actually do the licenses out of my center, but I work very closely with our technology transfer office that does. So it's at MIT, it's fairly simple. Any technology developed at the university using university facilities or by people or employees will be owned by MIT, but MIT will pay all the costs of filing the patents, maintaining those patents, and then the licensing office will license it out to people. While MIT doesn't publish a standard set of contracts, they are fairly standard. Depending on the area, though, they need to be different. If you're doing a startup in biotechnology, the type of license you would do would be quite different to something which might be in a software area or in another area. But what we do is we have very experienced people who usually are sort of their second career. They've been in industry for probably 20 years as the licensing officers, so they can do the deals fairly quickly. And they'll start with a standard template, but almost every deal needs to be customized depending on the circumstance. We have had situations, actually one of our spin-outs was a software company where the technology was not patented, did not make sense, but was actually put out there as sort of something that was freely available. It's a very successful spin-out company in databases, and it was bought by Hewlett-Packard for a large amount of money.
A couple of people have asked through social networks if you have ever been challenged ethically by the way, by the target market of a technology or the potential of a technology to produce unethical outcomes?
So certainly it's something we take seriously. I can't think of a case where we found ourselves having spun off a company that's doing things that we don't like. SRI is a public institution. We have a charter. We're chartered to do things for the public good. So we would not start a company that was trying to do something that was detrimental to society, in our opinion. Having said that, when a company is spun out of SRI or anywhere else, it becomes an independent company. For us, during the early stages of the company, we often have a board seat. We don't have control of the company. We have one board seat and we're not a controlling member. Later in the life of the company, we don't even have that. So again, I can't think of a circumstance where this has come up, but if it did, it would not be in our control after launch.
That's why Siri is so nice.
Well, there actually have been questions about some of Siri's answers. I wouldn't say that they were ethical problems.